Hey guys, it's the Metal Blade 5, and E3 2017 came and went, well, faster than last year's, in my opinion. And then I couldn't say anything about the matter for a week because of exams. Well, now that I have freedom, I can finally talk about E3 since I've had a lot of feelings to express on all the games that caught my attention this year. I mean, that kind of like what I did with last year, I'm only focusing on the games that I myself can actually play, and what exactly relates to me. So for this video, I'm only focusing on Nintendo and a bit of Sony and Ubisoft's press conferences, as well as several games that appeared at E3, but not as part of a presentation. Okay, this video is probably going to be much longer than my E3 2016 video, so let's just get right to it, starting with Nintendo's Spotlight. So first, Nintendo showed off more of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, in which... okay, we learned like nothing new about the plot from the trailer, aside from kind of how the fact that the red-haired girl, who I kept thinking has massive tits despite how young she looks, is like the main character's sword, which is kind of confusing, but I saw people theorizing that back from the first trailer, so it isn't really much of a surprise. Most of the trailer was more just showing the characters who look even more anime and kiddie from when we first saw them, due to the weird shift in style from the first game, as well as some cutscenes, but I personally found it a little hard to follow since our current understanding of the plot is still so limited. Dude wants to go to Elysium. That's it. Unfortunately, this trailer showed about 2 seconds of the battle system, which is the most important aspect of the game for me, and I haven't seen any of the treehouse footage yet, so I have very little to say about this game here. All that's really left for me to say is that we get to hear the English dub voice acting, in which everybody is British again, like in the first game, except for one voice who sounded kind of American to me, in which I immediately thought, he's not British, then he's evil. Oh, and I guess at the end of the trailer they revealed that the game is coming out this winter. I don't believe it, but whatever. So next, completely out of nowhere, they announced a new Kirby game for the Switch, coming next year. This announcement doesn't appear to be getting as much attention as the others, most likely due to what we'll see later, but I got pretty excited when I saw this. I kind of miss Kirby games on home console since the last one with the main mechanics was Adventure Wii, which came out back in 2011, and funnily enough, this game follows a very similar style to Adventure Wii, in which we're back to having 4 players during the main game, albeit this time it's in the form of the return of the partner system from Funpack. However, that isn't the only thing that appears to be returning, as it appears that to some degree, the dual copy abilities on Crystal Shards is back, and that was always a mechanic that I thought was so cool, and wondered why they never brought it back, so I'm happy to see it return in some capacity. Again, I don't have too much to say on this game, just because a lot of the trailer was reminiscent of things in Adventure Wii. However, it appears that as per usual, there will be new copy abilities in this game, as I noticed one ability in the trailer being Cleaning Kirby, which, as far as I'm aware, has never appeared before. If they continue the streak of introducing awesome new copy abilities like they do with Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, then I'll be even more excited. Now we just need an actual name for it, in which it will probably end up having a different name in Europe anyway. Next up, Nintendo decided to focus on Pokemon again, even though they already did a direct dedicated Pokemon, which, like many people, I did find disappointing. But not for the reason that everybody else is saying. Okay, mini rant here, since this has been really pissing me off, but whenever I see someone say why people found that direct disappointing, they always say, because they believed those rumors. And I always hate when people take all the criticism that something receives and place it under one reason. It's a bit like how I hear, the only reason why Sugar Conroy criticized Pokemon learning moves through TM and Platinum was because TMs were finite. Because that's a load of shit. I never believed that Pokemon Stars rumor. And while I would have liked to see Gen 4 remakes, I did think they were unlikely. The reason why I found the direct disappointing was because they spent most of it focusing on a port, which honestly isn't too exciting, and then they briefly showed off the next main series games being Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which completely confused me on whether or not they were sequels or essentially DLC, the game. Along with the fact that Game Freak announced a sort of sequel game less than a year after the initial game's release, which feels rushed to me. But with that aside, when they spent even more time talking about Pokken Tournament Deluxe, I was like, we get it, Game Freak! We can play it at E3, it has all the additional arcade fighters who for some reason weren't DLC, and it also has Decidueye. But I instantly got back in high spirits when Ishihara was like, "Oh, by the way, we're making a main series Pokemon game for the Switch?" I said this before and I'll say it again, but ideally I hope that this Switch game is Gen 4 remakes. I personally think it's too soon for a Gen 8, and I love Gen 4 to death because of nostalgia, so I would love to see it happen. Get to work on it, Game Freak, now. Then we get to the big one. The announcement that I'm pretty sure you were all waiting for me to get to, just because everybody lost their shit when this happened, and it's the reason why most people say Nintendo won E3. Metroid Prime 4. When that teaser started, and it was in space, I got very hopeful. Then I saw the stars join together and thought, is that the Screw Attack S? Then the 4 came up and completely distracted me from the S, in which for some reason I initially thought of Fantastic Four, but then I thought back to the S, and then the Metroid Prime music kicked in, and I started jumping up and down in my chair. Then the title came up, and my life became complete. Finally! Nintendo does something with Metroid other than a spin-off after 7 years of waiting! Of course we don't know anything about the game other than it's in development for the Switch, and that surprisingly Retro Studios is not developing this game unlike the first 3. Instead it's the studio that made the Castlevania Lords of Shadow games, which I've never played so I don't know what to expect. Hopefully the core gameplay will stick to that of the other Prime games, in which obviously there will be new features and power-ups and so on. I do have the Prime Trilogy on the Wii U, but I've only played the very beginning of 1 just because I've been distracted by every other game in existence. So I guess Prime 4 will be my motivation to play through the trilogy. Now, you thought that Nintendo announcing one Metroid game would be enough to make us happy, but nope. They went all DJ Khaled and were like, another one. As we also got a remake of Metroid 2 for the 3DS titled Metroid Samus Returns. How fitting after the absence. Like with Xenoblade 2, I haven't seen much of this one, but I'm still excited, and hopefully they can expand on Metroid 2 so that this game doesn't suffer from the repetitive nature of constantly finding evolved Metroids throughout the whole game. Now Nintendo's dickish reaction to AM2R makes much more sense, as they were either actually already working on a remake themselves, or they looked at it and thought, challenge accepted. Completely shifting the tone in the spotlight, Nintendo next revealed a new Yoshi game, which is being done in a similar style to Yoshi's Woolly World. However, they also have the primary mechanic of shifting between the foreground and the background. Kind of like that Wario Land game on the Virtual Boy, which apparently was the only good game on that system. Like with the new Kirby game, all we got to see of this game was a trailer, and there isn't an official title yet, but based on the gameplay in the trailer, my major concern with this game is that it looked kinda slow-paced, which could end up making the game kind of boring, so I just hope that they improve the speed later on, but everything else was perfectly fine in my opinion. Similarly to the Metroid Prime trilogy, I have played Yoshi's Woolly World, but I only got up to World 2, since I got distracted by other games, so I have another incentive to finish a game I've been meaning to for a while. Next up, we got to see more of Fire Emblem Warriors, which was one of the games that we knew was going to be at E3 that I was really looking forward to, considering how excited I got for the game when it was revealed at the Nintendo Switch presentation. But I was kinda disappointed in what was shown off in regards to the trailer. My opinions on the game haven't changed, and seeing the gameplay made me even more hyped for it, since it has everything I loved about Hyrule Warriors, just with Fire Emblem mechanics like pairing up units and giving commands to the other playable characters on where to move on the map. My disappointment came from the new characters that were revealed at E3. We saw the two generic new protagonists for this game, Rowan and Liana, who were previously revealed in some Japanese magazine reporting on the game. And then, for the already established characters, we saw Marth, Corrin, who's oddly female by default since I thought male Corrin was more recognizable, Ryoma, and Xander. I have nothing wrong with these characters being in the game, it's just, we already knew all these characters were going to be playable based on the teaser trailer. So I was just hoping that we would see at least one character we weren't expecting. Like, going back to that Japanese magazine, it also confirmed my prediction that the roster would be focusing on Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, Awakening, and Fates for playable characters. Which does annoy some people, and I can understand that. I mean, I'm admittedly not as bothered just because I kind of guessed that would be the case, and because I'm not a Fire Emblem elitist, so I don't have as much experience with the older games compared to others, but like I said before, I would like to mainly see characters from Ike's games and GBA as well, but hopefully it's DLC then. My only major gripe with focusing on those 3 games is the reason behind it was because they didn't want too many sword users, since most main characters use swords. But every character we've seen in the game is a sword user. This is another reason why I hoped we see an unexpected character, so that we could see that there is more than just sword users in this game. Ideally from the 3 games, I would like to see Shida, Robin, Takumi, and Camilla playable, and none of them primarily use swords. But they did reveal Amiibo for the game, in which there's one for Tiki, so I would imagine that she must be playable as well, so we have a Manakete now. In terms of the gameplay, my only critique is that I don't like how characters leveling up interrupts the gameplay. I think the information should just be placed in, like, the corner of the screen instead, but regardless, I'm still hyped for the game and can't wait to see what other characters are playable at a future date. Just again, no more sword users. But anyway, moving on, we get a glimpse of the DLC for Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, in which I had honestly forgot that they were making DLC for this game. I haven't played that much because of exams. I've only finished one Divine Beast, which is Varuta, but for the first DLC pack, there appears to be some sort of challenge trial where Link starts off with no clothes and no weapons, so I'm guessing it must be really hard. Additionally, the first pack comes with different gear, such as Tingle's costume and Majora's mask, which I'm guessing provide different effects, if the Korok mask is anything to go by, as well as a Master Mode, which I'm assuming makes you take more damage, as if it wasn't easy enough to die in this game, as well as giving bosses the ability to regenerate health. Then they briefly teased the second DLC pack, titled The Champion's Ballad, and I have absolutely no idea what this is going to do. All they showed was the flashback scenes with each of the champions, which makes me think that either the champions are going to be playable in some capacity, or it's going to be some sort of prequel campaign during the time in which the flashbacks take place. The champions also got Amiibo, which I guess is cool, but I'm not an Amiibo collector, so I honestly don't care. As for my thoughts on both packs, I'll probably wait to see gameplay on what they actually do before I decide to get them myself, just so I can understand what I'm getting myself into. But anyway, probably the most random game that Nintendo, as well as Ubisoft, since they showed this game off in their conference too, is a crossover between Mario and the Rabbids, known as Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Now this game was previously leaked, so we already knew about it, but it's still super random. The Rabbids have invaded the Mushroom Kingdom, in which Mario, Luigi, Peach, Yoshi, and Rabbid versions of themselves must team up to stop them. And there's even a Donkey Kong Rabbid. This was yet another game that I haven't gotten to see too much of yet, since a lot of the other games in this video took my priority, but from what I have seen, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I don't know if I'll end up getting it, but it does look like a decent game at the very least, since it's like a tactical RPG with arm cannons and shit, and it actually does look pretty fun. Plus, I actually have had experience with the Rabbids when I was younger, as I remember one game I played quite a bit when it came out when I was a kid was Rabbids Go Home, which is this very wacky and weird game where the Rabbids steal shit, including a frickin' airplane in one level, in order to build a tower to take them to the moon. So, I guess you could say that I'm not one of those people who hate the Rabbids with passion, since I know there are some people who do. But on the subject of Mario and RPGs, outside of the spotlight, Nintendo also revealed Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga plus Bowser's Minions and Knuckles, featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series. This is a remake of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga for the 3DS. And even though it is a remake, seeing a new Mario & Luigi game is a treat for me. Albeit, due to the fact that I've Let's Played the original Superstar Saga, it does look really weird for me to see the game's cutscenes and locations on the 3DS engine. But the major new addition to this remake is the Bowser's Minions mode, which I don't exactly get, but it looks like some sort of RPG-esque Pikmin thing, if I can find a good way of explaining it, since you don't control them, but you command them where to go and what to attack. I'll have to see more of this to form a full opinion of it myself. While this is a relatively minor thing for me to talk about since I haven't actually played this game, the penultimate game Nintendo showed was that Rocket League is coming to the Switch, with additional cars and customization options like Mario and Luigi hats. While I haven't played Rocket League myself, I guess this could be a good opportunity for me to actually get it, since it does look really fun from what I've seen. But of course, we finally reached the end of Nintendo Spotlight, with another one of the games that got me super hyped. Of course, it's Super Mario Odyssey. At the beginning of that trailer, when it was just showing the field, I initially thought of Monster Hunter, just because there's so many Monster Hunter games on Nintendo consoles. But I also briefly thought of Mario Odyssey, since the area did kind of make me think of somewhere you would explore on an expedition. But then when the T-Rex showed up, I went back to thinking of Monster Hunter until Mario's hat, or rather Cappy, appeared. So in this trailer, we got a better look at the levels, as well as a few new ones, such as Halloween Town, but more importantly, we learned of a new mechanic in which Mario throws Cappy at an enemy or interactable object, and Mario will possess it. I have seen some weird shit in Mario games, but this definitely takes the cake. You can possess Goombas, you can possess taxis, you can possess the humans in New Donk City, and you can become a T-Rex! Honestly, I think I came when Mario possessed the T-Rex, as that's like one of the coolest things I have ever seen in a video game. They also showed off how Mario can actually purchase clothes from that respective world's shop to change his appearance, which even includes the NES Golf Mario and his Super Mario Maker outfit. Plus, apparently Nintendo revealed that those weird rabbits who appeared in the previous trailer are actually Bowser's wedding planners, since apparently it takes some random rabbits to convince Bowser that he should kidnap and marry Peach this time around. Lastly, in regards to the trailer, they had this really catchy jazz track playing in the background, which makes me really look forward to the rest of the soundtrack. But at the end, it's actually revealed that Pauline is the one singing the song, and that she's the mayor of New Donk City, which explains all the Donkey Kong references. It feels so weird to have Pauline in a main series Mario game, but I'm guessing Nintendo were going all out with this one. So this was the game I pretty much prioritized watching gameplay of on the show floor, and holy crap, they weren't kidding when saying this game would go back to the exploration style. There appears to be tons of moons in each level, and you can get them in any order you want, unlike Mario 64 and Sunshine, where some stars/sprites could only be achieved in specific missions. Plus, the different abilities that Mario gains access to through the possession ability is insane and opens the way for a lot of puzzle opportunities. While this has been the case for most people, Mario Odyssey is easily my most hyped game shown at E3 this year. And I can't wait for it to come out on the 27th of October, which is much earlier than what I was expecting it to be, based on a winter release window. Now Nintendo is finally out of the way, let's look at the other companies. So with Ubisoft, other than Mario plus Rabbids, one game they had at E3 which did catch my attention was Assassin's Creed Origins, in which I completely forgot they were making this game previously. Again, I haven't seen much of this game, but I like Assassin's Creed, even though it is the same thing every time. But at least Ubisoft has apparently realized that, as I've heard that they're making some changes to the gameplay for this one, so maybe it will hold my interest longer than other games in the series. While I can't say anything about my impressions of the gameplay since I've only seen them from trailers, one thing I do like about the game so far is the ancient Egypt setting, because that's a drastically different location compared to the other games which generally take place in a more advanced civilization by comparison. I just pray to the Egyptian gods that the game ends up being good so we don't have another Unity, as well as for other people to enjoy the game as well, because I sometimes feel that Assassin's Creed gets a bit of unnecessary hate. Although I will admit that it's like the Call of Duty of stealth games in terms of its releasing rate. That's everything Ubisoft attracted me with, so all that's left is Sony, where Similarly, only 2 games really caught my attention just because a lot of their confidence were repeat showings of games from 2016 like God of War. And oh boy, grab some popcorn here because I'm probably gonna end up talking about this game for a while.
All biological life must be exterminated.
Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Like with Fire Emblem Warriors, this is one of the games we knew was going to be at E3, which I was really excited for. Then I saw the characters, and my hype took a massive blow. Okay, so the characters they revealed in this trailer from the Marvel side were Doctor Strange, Gamora, Nova, and Thanos, and the Capcom characters were Dante, Arthur, Spencer, and Zero. The reason why the characters bother me is because prior to E3, there was a supposed leak of the entire base roster from a credible source, and when I saw it I thought, this roster is shit, please don't let it be true. And all of the characters revealed in this trailer are in that leak except for Zero, which gives me some hope that maybe that leak isn't the entire roster, but it also mentioned that there was one Capcom character missing, which was probably Zero. When I saw Gamora appear, I instantly knew that the leak was real, because there's no way that someone would be able to just guess Gamora would be playable, let alone over Star-Lord, and get it right. But with that leaked roster itself, the reason why I think it's shit is because it's so underwhelming. It's a relatively small roster, which doesn't surprise me, but some character choices are really stupid. There are a few new characters in the base roster, most of them are returning from free. A lot of popular characters from previous games like Wesker and Phoenix Wright are absent, while instead we have characters from Ultimate that I barely see people play like Nemesis and Firebrand. And a lot of highly requested newcomers such as Asura and Loki are also not there. There are a few characters in there that I like, for instance Jedha from Darkstalkers is in, and I think he's a cool villain, but I think both the Marvel and Capcom sides could have done so much better, even with the ironically limited numbers. Now, the trailer shown at Sony's conference was fine for me in terms of what they showed from the story mode, with my only concern with the story being that I hope it doesn't just boil down to the Avengers and Capcom characters go to this location, get the Infinity Stone, and move on to the next one. But they also released a gameplay trailer elsewhere, which I didn't find out about until I randomly came across it being uploaded by Maximilian Dude, where they showed gameplay for most of the newly revealed characters, and showed off what the Reality Stone does, where it creates a homing projectile, but then the Storm version lets you use fire, ice, and lightning attacks. However, Capcom also released a demo of the game's story mode, which I have played myself, so since I've actually kind of played the game, I will say though that the game's really fun to play, but as of now, the presentation leaves a lot to be desired. The fighting mechanics are super fast-paced, and I really like the new tag system, as it makes extending combos really easy for me when normally in fighting games, I suck at performing good combos. I mean, you can even switch between characters during a hyper combo, and the hyper combo will still go through. Plus, for someone like me who sucks at fighting games, I found it simple to perform special moves, and as of right now, X is probably my best character. But as most people are complaining about, the graphics are an issue. Granted, I'm not as bothered by the graphics just because that isn't as important as gameplay, but I do agree that they're very subpar. Some character models look fine, like Captain Marvel and X, but then you look at characters like Chun-Li and Rocket and you think, ugh! Also, another thing that pisses me off about this game: Black Panther is DLC. First they did it with Sigma, and now they're doing it with Black Panther. So, not only are all the DLC characters going to be new characters, which means that Capcom are placing the characters people are more interested in behind a paywall, but just like with Sigma, Black Panther is in the story mode, but not part of the base roster. If you're going to have DLC for a fighting game with a story, I think you should do what NetherRealm is doing with Injustice 2 DLC, where they're adding popular characters that they couldn't find a way of including in the story mode. Having them in the story mode, but not playable, gives me flashbacks of Mortal Kombat X, in which you fought non-playable characters who had full movesets in the story, but only Tanya ended up being playable through DLC, and I hated that about MKX. I'm still salty that we never got Rain. In terms of the roster, it feels Capcom is making the same mistake as with Street Fighter V, where it's so bare bones at first, but then characters people actually want to see end up being added later on. Considering how we already have Rocket paired with Groot and Gamora in the roster, if Star-Lord appears in the story mode but as DLC, I will be livid. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the new DLC Marvel characters ended up being Black Panther, Loki, and Star-Lord, since they're the most requested from what I've seen. But overall, my thoughts on Infinite are that in terms of the gameplay, I can't wait, but there are a number of red flags for me, such as the roster, which makes me want the game to be delayed so Capcom has more time to work on it. The only other thing about that leak is that it says Venom is going to be DLC, which is a bit odd, seeing as how he was playable in 1 and 2, but if that happens, then I won't complain just because Venom is my favorite Spider-Man villain. Speaking of Spider-Man, the last game for this video that got shown off E3 was Insomniac's new Spider-Man game, now titled Marvel's Spider-Man. So, rather than necessarily a trailer, Sony showed off essentially a demo in which we got a good grasp of what the gameplay is like. It appears to be very similar to the Arkham games, with its stealth sections and combat, although in Spider-Man's case he's much more agile and athletic than Batman. I mean, that alone is enough to make me want to get the game since the Arkham games are great, and adding a Spider-Man twist to it would just be amazing. However, they also showed that there will be QuickTime events, which I'm not sure how to feel about since I'm not much of a fan of QTEs, but it does make the game incredibly dynamic at points like with that crane. As for the story, well, we didn't get much other than Peter's older this time around, and a tease of Miles Morales at the end, which makes me wonder if this is going to be a semi-origin story for him. One of the things I did mention about this game last year was that I hope they add a lot of Spider-Man's villains, and so far we've seen 2, being Kingpin and Mr. Negative, who I had never heard of before, but I do hope that we at least get to see some of Spider-Man's top-tier villains like Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus. I mean, I did see a campaign sign saying Osborn, so let's hope. So the other thing I hear a lot of people talking about with this game is in regards to the web slinging, as people are debating if it will be better than Spider-Man 2's. I don't have anything to add to this debate since, like I said last year, I haven't actually played a Spider-Man game before, but if the web slinging feels very smooth, which I think will end up being the case as Spider-Man learned how to hardcore parkour off of buildings, then I could end up enjoying the web sling around New York City more than gliding around Gotham in the Arkham games. I know this makes me sound like a spoiled brat, but I just wish we got to see a little bit more of this game in terms of what Spider-Man is actually capable of doing in combat and stealth, just because this is the game that got me excited the most out of everything Sony showed, and I just wish I had more to say about it. But regardless, I can't wait for this game to come out at some point next year, and see more of what Insomniac has to do with the plot and the Spider-Man mythos.